Welcome to my tutorial series on the Airtable API. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a passwordless sign-in workflow similar to apps like Slack. This consists of creating a magic URL that when you click on it, it goes to the login page and automatically authenticates you and logs you into the app. This is a companion screencast to a blog article I wrote, how to create a passwordless sign-in. You can follow along by going to this article at my website at shanarajames.com. I've also provided this link in the video description, and you can get the base code and the full working demo code repo in the video description. If you're not familiar with Airtable, it's an easy way to create a database for anything using a familiar spreadsheet interface. And it has a great API where you can then use these databases to power your web apps. So I'm going to show you how to use the Airtable API to power your users table to create this passwordless signed in workflow. So let's go through what it is that we're going to build. Here is a sign up form. The user will enter their name and their email address. When they click the sign up button, they will be added to our users table in our database. Also notice that a token has been created for them along with a timestamp of when this token was created. They would then receive an email with this link based on the token and their email address, and then they could click on it and sign into the application. If this link expires, they can click on the sign into your profile, enter their email address, and get a new login link. Notice the message, please check your email for your magic sign-in link. They get the email with the magic sign-in link, which has the link. They click on it and they're authenticated. This is a simplified version of a passwordless sign-in, but the logic can be applied and improved upon for production apps. To test my email being sent to the fake addresses, I'm using Mailtrap. There is a free plan. So to begin the tutorial, sign up for Mailtrap. And if you don't already have an Airtable account, you should do that now too. Now I'm not going to go through the code step by step, but I am going to go through the finished working demo. If you go to my GitHub repo, you can get the base starter files to follow along with the article, or you can play around with the full working code and figure it out yourself. And again, those links are in the video description below. I have in the package.json file all the dependencies you require for this project, and you will, for the environment variables for Airtable and Mailtrap, I have included an example variables file where you can fill in these keys. You could even change the port number, but of course you need to rename this file, remove the example dot, and make sure not to commit this file to your GitHub repo, but it will go on your production server. So let's go through the routes required for this application. I have a route to display the sign up page. I have a route for when the user submits the sign up form, their name and their email. And I have routes for the login flow to display the login form and to when they submit the form to authenticate them and create a magic link. In Data Controller, I have a catch-all function, helper function, that is basically to get all Airtable records or to get any single records from the database. This is going to be heavily used in the main controller of this application, which is the user controller. At the top of this file, I've required in all the dependencies, including the data controller, so we can use this get Airtable records function. I have configured Airtable with the environment keys, and I have specified the name of the table in Airtable is users, and grid view. So I have three helper functions here that we're going to use throughout the app. One is to generate a token. The token is based on a random string that is a combination of the record ID and the email. I think that this is a pretty good enough combination to create unique random strings, as every record has its own ID and everyone's email address is different. The second helper function I have is to generate the login URL, which basically takes the token that we created before and the email address and creates a URL string with the token and a query parameter that has the email address so that we can later authenticate the user when they click the link in their email. And then I have a get user by email, which is self-explanatory, which queries the Airtable database, uses the email address supplied by the link, and filters all these users for a matching email address, and then returns their details. And that way we could then present them with their profile. So let's start off with the sign up flow. In the index.js, where all the routes are, we have the function right here when you visit the index page to render out the index which has the sign up form. The templates for the application is stored in templates views, and this is the basic HTML for the sign up form. It's pretty standard. It's a form. Note that the action is set to /signup, which we would use in the routes to specify the functions to execute when we visit this page, when the form is posted to this action. And then we have, as you can see, when the person posts to the sign up route, we do some validation here of the data entered, and then we call the sign up function in the user controller. So let's take a look at that function. We have some validation here, and if there is any errors, these will be presented. If not, we will create a new user record. We will add the name and the email first. If there's no errors, we then generate the token using our generate token helper function. Airtable, this record parameter here, you can then get after creation of the record, you will get the ID. So remember that in our generate token, we need the ID and an email address. So that's why initially we only supply the name and email to create the record, and then use our helper function to now generate a token. When this token is generated, we then update that same record because we still have access to the record ID and pass through the generated token and the token date, which is just a timestamp of today's date and time in the international ISO format. If everything goes well and there's no errors, we then generate a magic link using our other helper function to generate login URL. We supply it with the token we just created and the email address from the created record and store it to the request.body URL. This can be anything. It's really the request.body is the important part. You can name this parameter anything. And then we send it on to the next function in the middleware, which is sending the email. If you look back at the routes file, you can see the next function to be called is send email. Now I'm using the Node Mailer npm package, the Node Mailer module to send email. And I got this code straight from their documentation. I have set up the variables for the two field, the subject, and the body, and just use some uh, string interpolation here to send a message, put in the URL, which would now be the token, and then configure new mailer with my SMTP information that would have been stored in my environments variable file, and then set the mail options, and then send the mail. When the mail is sent, we render the index page, which will give them a message of please check your email for the magic sign-in link. They will then go to their email account and click the link, which would then authenticate them and send them to their profile. So just have a look at the logging workflow. So first things first, the login page would display the login form. This function is right here. It just displays the login template, which is here. It's a simple form with a single field for the email address. We then, when the form is posted, we create the magic link. It's the first function in the middleware, and then we send the email, the second function. So if we look at the create magic link, we use our get user by email helper function to first check if the user exists. If the user does exist, we generate the token. If they don't, we send a message to the front end, the user does not exist. So we use our helper function to generate the token based on the user ID and the user email we now have access to because of this function here. And then we update the token and the token date because they have already well, they would have on their first sign up a link would have already been created, so a token would have already been created, but that has since expired because we've set the expiry to 5 minutes. So we need to now update those fields to give them a new token and a new timestamp for the token. We then generate the magic link using our helper function to generate login URL, supplying the token and the user email, and then add that URL to the request.body. And then call the next function in the middleware, which is send email, which we just went through below, which they would then click the link and be authenticated and signed into their profile. So that route is handled by if they click the link, they will go to login, magic link, and the token. This is a dynamic parameter, so whatever string comes after here, that is what will be here. This then calls the authenticate function in the user controller. So let's have a look at that. So this is the authenticate function. We're saving the token from the URL. We're getting the parameter token as we saw in the router file here. This will give the token string. And then we had a question mark in our URL, which would be an URL parameter. So we grabbed that by using request.query, and we named the parameter email. And then we stored the email. We remember we had a question mark in our URL. So we grabbed that by using request.query and the name of the query parameter. And you will remember that from the generate token URL helper function. If you just go up a little bit, you would see this question mark, and well, I'm using the query string package to stringify the email and escape any weird characters. So this is the dynamic parameter part here, and after the question mark, it's a query parameter. So we define all these variables and store them. We get the user by email because we have to check that they exist. If there are no errors, we will go on to validate the token. If there are errors, we send a message saying user does not exist. But if everything is okay, we take the user email, which we would get from this function, get user by email, and see if it's equal to the email in the URL, and the user.token, and see if it's equal to the token in the URL. We then check if the token is expired, if it's more than 5 minutes. I use a package called datefns, which has some useful date functions. One is called diff in minutes, so you supply the new date, today's date, and the user date, which is the date of the token, and see if it's more than 5 minutes, then it's expired. If it's not, then it's not expired. So if it is expired, we send them the login page. We redirect them to the login page and say Magic Link has expired. Enter your email to receive a new one. Else, you render their profile page. And that's it. That is how the basics of creating a passwordless flow. I do hope that this tutorial was useful, and you can subscribe to my channel to receive more tutorials about the Airtable API and WordPress. Thanks for watching. Bye.